Wow, Jean Marie. We're going to have to take a tour of that house when it's finished.
Oh, for sure. I can't wait to see what they do on the inside. Our next story is about a retired judge who is fed up with our failed drug policies. Judge Jim Gray was appointed the presiding judge of the Superior Court of Orange County in 1989, after presiding over the Santa Ana Municipal Court the 6 years prior. He is also a former federal prosecutor and served as the Judicial Advocate General, or JAG, in the United States Navy. Judge Gray, a former Republican, ran for the United States Senate on the Libertarian ticket in 2004. He has also authored 2 books, Why Our Drug Laws Have Failed and What We Can Do About It, and Wearing the Robe.
We're talking with the Honorable Jim Gray. He's a retired Orange County Superior Court judge. Jim, welcome to Cannabis Planet.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you and talk about a really important, if not critical, issue.
Now, in your book, Why Our Drug Laws Have Failed and What Can We Do About It? Tell us, what can we do about it?
There is today a prohibition on drugs. But even as bad as that, there's a prohibition on drug discussion. We can talk about it. It's okay to discuss drug policy. Mandatory minimum sentences do not work, just compound the problems. Probably drug prohibition is the biggest failed social policy in the history of our country, second only to slavery. It's time to repeal drug prohibition. And I don't mean to make a pun here, but this is the ultimate grassroots movement. This is something that people can really help with. Once we legitimize the discussion, we will change away from this failed policy of drug prohibition.
Well, Judge Gray, we look right now at California. Along with 13 other states, they have legalized medical cannabis. And yet, the federal books still show that as a criminal act. How do we resolve the two?
One of the fundamental planks of conservative philosophy is the concept of federalism. Allow each state, the most local form of government that's able to address a particular issue, allow them to tackle the issue and take it, and get the federal government out of it. And one of the big ironies that we have seen is that the very conservative so-called George W. Bush administration ignored that concept completely, and now the very liberal Obama administration has honored it. And so the Obama administration has, fortunately and appropriately, said through its Attorney General Holder that as long as people are well within state and local law, the federal government will leave them alone. Hooray for that. Fully appropriate. Prohibition never works as well as regulation and control, and let's address it accordingly.
Well, Judge, it's the classic saying, those who can't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Is not today's prohibition against cannabis almost a direct equivalent to the prohibition against alcohol back in the 20s?
We're still trying to approach this from a puritanical situation. If you fail my drug morality test, I will punish you. And we've just got to change that. It hasn't worked. We lead the world in incarcerating our people. We have a more severe drug policy in our country than almost any other country in the Western world, and we have a bigger drug problem than any other country in the Western world, and I'm convinced there's a connection. I'm further convinced that we will eventually, hopefully sooner than later, change our policy. And once we do that, all of us around the country will link arms together and look back and be astonished that we could have perpetuated such a failed system for so long. I guarantee that that will be the result.
Judge, for those watching at home who agree with you, what can we as individuals do to bring about the end of cannabis prohibition?
There is this initiative on the ballot in November of 2010 to treat marijuana like alcohol. Tax it, regulate it, control it, support it. This is something that I strongly favor. I don't just take my word for it. Look into it. It allows each city to decide how best to treat this issue. They can allow it to be sold within their jurisdiction or not. It's up to them, which I think is wonderful. We can do this. We're adults. We can run our own city. We can run our own state. The federal government obviously does not have all the answers. Let's allow each state, or in California, each city to decide how best to do this. And then we can use these crucibles of democracy, in effect, and figure out what works. It's a good way to go. I have a great deal of confidence. I've been talking about our nation's drug policy now since 1992, a long time ago. During that period of time, we've been running against the wind. But today, the wind's at our backs.
Well, Judge, I noticed that your book has been endorsed by the former governor of New Mexico, Gary Johnson, who, by the way, we just had on our show just a couple of weeks ago. Are the two of you political allies?
Governor Johnson is an inspiration. You know, this man tells the truth. He has a private life. He's his own man. I was greatly pleased when he endorsed my book. He is at least flirting with the idea of running for president. I will certainly support him if he does that, not only because of drug policy, but because he's just an intelligent public servant who's going to do the right thing for the right reason. And he was on your show, and he certainly speaks well too, and he connects with everybody. So I think he's a fine fellow. This entire hemp industry can be revitalized. It baffles me as to why big agricultural and merchandising interests have not gotten behind this. And I'll just leave this conversation by saying that it's my understanding that 1,000 years ago, the word cannabis and canvas were the same word. And it just goes on from there. So we could revitalize that. We now punish our merchants by making them import hemp from those radical countries like Canada and England to their benefit and, of course, to our punishment.
Well, Judge, it's been both an honor and a pleasure talking with you today.
Hi, I'm Bill Panzer, and you're watching Cannabis Planet